I want to browse to a website, right? I've got a little old diagram for this. So I want to use a computer and I want to pull up a website. I want to pull up www.google.com. Well, in my mind, what I'm thinking is google.com. But that's not what the computer is thinking. What the computer is thinking is, well, it's thinking in binary, right? It's an electronic device. It's using electronic impulses. It's communicating in ones and zeros. That is very, very different than what we communicate in as human beings. So how do I tell the computer I want to go to google.com when the computer doesn't even understand what that is? Well, the operating system is what's sitting in between me and the computer, and it's listening. It's listening to the keyboard, to the mouse, to microphone, whatever it is that I'm using to communicate with the system. And it's receiving that information, translating it into a way that the computer can then understand. Now, the operating system is rarely working by itself. It's normally got other applications that go along with it. So, for example, if I'm browsing the internet, I need a web browser. And maybe I have Google Chrome or Internet Explorer or Mozilla Firefox. Well, how do those programs know to talk to my hardware? Usually they don't. Those programs know how to talk to my operating system. And they leave it up to the operating system to talk to the hardware. When you buy a new computer, a laptop, a desktop, a server, the only software that you normally get is the operating system. And then we start adding applications on top of it to make it do more, to make it do all the individual tasks that we want. But that operating system, that is the core common component that every computer needs to have in order to function, in order to operate. You know, that's where that name, operating system, comes from. Now, operating systems have evolved a ton over the years. Back in the 1970s, when a lot of this stuff was really developing, operating systems all looked the same. They were command line interfaces. You pushed power on the computer and you were greeted with a little prompt and you could then type commands in, right? Not very user-friendly. It was designed for more sophisticated users. And that experience really kind of held computers back. And then in the early 80s, and really throughout the 1980s, we saw operating systems take a different spin. Now they became...
awooday ma tahay arday doonaya barashada IT-ga iyadoo aad ku baranayso muddo kooban.
haddii aad tahay arday daneynaya barashada kombiyuutarka laabka iyo ku hadalka luqadaha Ingiriiska, Heritage Academic waxa uu ku hayaa koorsooyinka kala ah
Active Director the Human Service, Computer Communication Networking, American English.
koorsooyinkaasi waxa ay soconayaan muddo dhan 3 bilood. halkan waa Heritage Academic sida aad u jeedaan systemka cusub ee sanadkan ayaa halkan ku yaala waad u jeedaan goobta aan fadhiyo sida ay u qurxan tahay adiga kaliya ayaa ku raaxaysanaya kombiyuutarkaada. Heritage Academic waa academic diyaarinaya arday khibradooda aad loo diyaarinayo. sidoo kale iskuulka waxa uu diyaar ku leeyahay practical joogto ah oo loogu talagalay ardayda baranaysa koorsooyinka aan kor ku soo xusay.
isdiiwaangelinta iskuulka Heritage Academic waxa ay bilaabanaysaa 22-ka bisha 8aad sanada 2021 waxayna ku eg tahay 5ta bisha 9aad sanada 2021. Heritage Academic waxa uu ku yaalaa degmada Hodan gaar ahaan agagaarka Laanta Axmed Gurey. wixii faahfaahin dheeraad ah fadlan kala xiriir lambarada shaashada kaaga muuqda.
A graphical user interface became very, very common. And so you end up with modern operating systems today that when you look at them, look something like this, right? This is Microsoft Windows 10, which is the most popular operating system on the planet. So this one's run by most people. Odds are you at home are running this one. It's not the only operating system that's out there, right? There's plenty of others. For example, I'm on a laptop, and my laptop is running Mac OS. That's a different operating system, and it looks like this, right? Again, another graphical user interface that I can interact with. But there's other operating systems still, things like GNU Linux. Linux is actually a very old operating system, older than Linux itself actually isn't that old. We'll talk more about it in the Linux show. But Linux is built with compatibility around another operating system called Unix, and Unix is older than the other operating systems that I mentioned. And Linux looks like this. It's very, very similar, right? So this is actually Ubuntu Linux. And when I go into these operating systems, what I'm really seeing is a way for me to interact with the computer. I want to browse the internet. How do I do that? Well, in Linux, I've got an icon for my web browser right here. I click on the icon, and here comes my web browser, and I can get out there and I can browse the internet. Apparently slowly, but I can do it. There we go. And so now I'm in my web browser, and I can go to we'll just go to Google, and there's Google's webpage. Back in Mac OS, I say, all right, I want to browse the internet. Well, right down here, I've got an icon for Safari. I fire that up, and now it's going to launch Safari. and I can type in www.google. Actually, they had a shortcut right there on the screen. I could have clicked, right? Little variations, but by and large, they're functioning the same way. And lastly, right here in Microsoft Windows, same thing, right? I've got an icon for the Microsoft Edge browser right there on my desktop. I can fire that up. I can browse to Google. These are three very different operating systems, but they're all giving me the same ability. They're giving me the ability to launch an application that I can then use for personal or business use or whatever, but to get a job done, to achieve a task, right? Remember, the computers, when they were originally designed, were designed as tools to perform some kind of work function. Now, today's computer is very different, right? You've got video gaming rigs where people are doing all sorts of crazy things. And it's not so much about work anymore. So we've seen computers start to divide up, and now you have not just one generic type of computer. If it was that way, we'd still have computers that were the size of houses. But computers are much more purpose-built. And operating systems can be much more purpose-built.